I stood there staring at the tall metal fence that now completely encircled my ranch. A no trespassing private HOA property sign dangled smack in the middle of the gate, which was locked. I blinked, my own ranch fenced, locked like I was the trespasser. I shook the gate hard. It wouldn't budge. I had been gone only 2 days to visit my mother in Houston 2 days. And now someone, or rather the HOA that had been harassing me for months, had chosen to fence me out of my own property. Not only that the one entrance gate had a heavy padlock on it. No combination, no spare key, no explanation. Just a smug little sign like it owned the place. But here's the part that will make you spit your sweet tea out. Instead of arguing, yelling, or calling lawyers, like they probably anticipated, I went out and purchased the small piece of land. The very one the gate was built on. The property that had the only gate key. That's right, I bought it. And what happened next? Oh, you're not ready for it. But let me tell you how we reached that absurd point. My name is Jessie Ray. I'm 43, a retired firefighter, and I live on a 40-acre ranch just outside of Austin, Texas. After decades of risking my life saving others, I finally saved up enough to buy this quiet little piece of land where I could raise horses, grow peaches, and wake up every morning to nothing but silence, except for the birds, of course. For the first year, life was good. No neighbors, just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your soul smile. Then the HOA came. Not from my side, no. My ranch didn't belong to any neighborhood. It was its own land, free and clear. But some developer decided to build a fancy new housing estate right next to me, like right next to me. And those houses fell under an entirely different HOA called Pine Brook Meadows. I didn't pay much attention at first. They were the ones moving in beside me, not me, them. I had fences signs and boundary markers. But those HOA folks, they had different ideas. First were the letters. They looked official, but I scoffed at them. Things like, your barn color isn't up to community standards, and kindly remove your tractor from view. I ignored all of them. Why? Because they didn't have any control over me. My land wasn't even in their HOA. Then came the visits. This one gentleman, Mr. Donald Snipe, dropped by with a small name tag and a smug smile. We're trying to create a nice, cohesive atmosphere. He said, your property stands out from the new homes, and honestly, the board thinks it doesn't fit our look. I offered him some fresh horse manure to go with his opinion. He didn't come back after that, but the HOA didn't give up. A few weeks later, I noticed odd surveyor flags along my fence line. Then I started to see new faces. Strangers walking around the property line with cameras and clipboards. I approached one of them and asked what they were doing. They muttered something about boundary reevaluation and scurried away. I had my land surveyed when I purchased it. All the boundaries were legal and clear, but I knew something was in the works. So I stopped by the county clerk's office just to see if anything funny was going on. And I was there. I got to talking to an elderly man behind the counter. He said, son, if that HOA's got their sights on you, they'll stop at nothing, beware. He wasn't joking. The next week, I drove out to Houston to visit my mom, who had just gotten out of surgery. I stayed 2 nights to make sure she was okay. On the 3rd day, I came back driving, and there it was, a shiny, brand new silver fence with thick steel mesh that surrounded my entire property. It wasn't a border. It was a wall. No notice, no warning, just bam, cut off from my own land. And at the only entrance was a small 5x5 patch of land, just a shard that jutted out from the new development. On that little parcel was the gate. And in a new posting on the internet, that little parcel had been quietly bought 2 weeks earlier by the Pine Brook Meadows HOA. They were sneaky, I'll give them that. They found a loophole. They didn't bother my property. Instead, they fenced around it using the border of their new territory. They didn't try to block me illegally. They simply shut their border to me trapped within it. I couldn't even make it to the gate without technically stepping on their property. And as they now owned the land, the gate sat upon. They controlled the sole entrance, the sole key. The sole means I was furious. But you know what they say, the greatest revenge isn't loud, it's quiet and smart. That night, I didn't call the police. I didn't scream online. I did do one thing. I called my friend Darnell. He's a real estate agent, and he owed me big time for helping him get his barn rebuilt when it burned down 2 years ago. Darnell, I said, I need you to get to know who owns the land under that gate, the same plot I want to buy it. He laughed, thought I was kidding, but I wasn't. 3 days later, he called me back. You won't believe this, he said. The man who sold that strip to the HOA, he has another small strip just at the rear of it. Borders, the main road. He was planning to sell it one day. I didn't even let him finish the sentence. I paid the money. The land at the rear of the gate, the only land with the physical access to the gate from the road, was mine. And the best part of all that property also had the little maintenance shed where they'd kept the only key to the gate. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. I waited till the weekend. The same day they were hosting a fancy HOA family picnic on their clubhouse lawn. I drove right on up in my old Dodge truck and parked at the edge of my new property. I left with a large red "No Trespassing Private Property" sign under my arm. And just as I was hammering the sign into the ground, Donald Snipe himself came running over in his polo shirt and khaki pants. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. I smiled, just posting a sign on my land. His face dropped. "Excuse me?" "Yep," I said. "Turns out the land. Back of your high-quality fence. The one with the gate isn't yours no more." He stiffened. "That's not possible." I held out the deed. "It is now." And then I reached for the key. The one key that operated the gate, and I slipped it into my pocket with a grin. "Guess I'll let myself onto my ranch whenever I want," I uttered, passing by him. He simply stood there in disbelief. But he wasn't by himself. The following day, something even crazier happened. Something I didn't see coming. It changed everything, and that's when complete pandemonium erupted. Next morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching the sunrise over the hills, when I noticed a cloud of dust rising from the HOA road. A convoy of SUVs and golf carts was making its way toward the gate. I figured it was just some board members coming to stare at the fence, like they were guarding the walls of Fort Knox. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. They didn't stop at the gate. They drove right onto my property through the side entrance I now owned, like they owned the place. I stepped down from the porch, heart racing. One of the cars parked just inches from my front steps, and out stepped Donald Snipe, along with 2 other HOA members and a woman in a business suit. I recognized her from the HOA welcome brochure, Ms. Beatrice Langford, the Pine Brook Meadows legal counsel. Donald didn't even say hello. He merely waved a folder and said, "We need to talk, Mr. Ray." I folded my arms, then talk. Beatrice stepped forward, lips pursed like she ate a lemon for breakfast. "You're being served notice. You are in violation of HOA zoning regulations and trespassing on community property." I raised an eyebrow. "Trespassing on my own land?" Donald motioned to the fence. "You're inside our enclosure. The community fence." Beatrice opened the folder and pulled out a map. "You see here," she said, tapping it. "Your ranch is now entirely within Pine Brook Meadows' secured perimeter. As such, we've marked it as internal green space." I stared at her in disbelief. "You made my ranch a park." "Not officially," Donald responded quickly, "but we've submitted a reclassification petition to the county. Once that's processed, you'll be required to follow all HOA regulations." I nearly choked on my breath. "You're saying you're trying to legally make my property part of your HOA without my permission?" Donald smiled politely. "It's for the good of the community." That was the last straw. I walked to the front of the house, pulled out my phone, and dialed my cousin, Travis. He wasn't just family, he was also one of the leading land use attorneys in the whole state of Texas. While they stood there smugly, I handed Donald the phone. "Travis Ray, attorney at law," he said on speaker. "You have about 3 seconds to step off my cousin's property before we slap you with criminal trespass harassment and civil liability." Donald paled. Beatrice grabbed the phone and tried to argue, but Travis didn't budge. He started rattling off property codes and quoting federal trespass laws. When he mentioned the term unlawful land enclosure, Beatrix's mouth shut. They left, but I knew it wouldn't be the last of them. However, I needed a break from the madness. So the next day, I drove into town to get some supplies and get some fresh air. I stopped at the local diner for a burger and sweet tea. Sheriff Daniels walked in midway through my lunch. He was an old buddy of mine from the fire department days. He sat down opposite me without being asked. "You really ticked off some powerful people?" he said, grinning. "You heard already?" I asked. "Man, it's all over town. HOA board came by the station this morning claiming you're barricading HOA members and going to establish a sovereign ranch state." I laughed. "They're serious. Oh, very serious. But don't worry," he said, slapping my shoulder. "They messed with the wrong Texan." I thought the worst was behind us. But that night, when I was brushing down the horses in the barn, I heard a strange sound outside, like shovels hitting dirt. I snuck out the back flashlight in hand and followed the sound to the far north edge of the fence. And that's when I saw it. 3 men in reflective vests were digging a trench. Not on my property, but right next to it. Just outside the fence, along the strip I had just bought. When I yelled, they froze. One of them dropped a walkie-talkie, and I heard the static hum of a voice keep digging. "We need that secondary access by sunrise." They were building a new entrance, a secret one. I raced back to the house, called Travis again, and grabbed my drone. I sent it flying, recorded all of it, the digging, the workers, the temporary blueprints laid out on a portable table, and just as I was zooming in on one of the maps, a spotlight hit the drone. Then I heard the sound of a rifle bolt being chambered. They were armed on HOA business. I could not even move. Someone fired a warning shot, bang into the air. My drone dropped from the sky and crashed to the ground. I dropped flat behind a hay bale, heart racing. Who were these people? I waited in the dark for an hour before I crept back out to get the drone. The camera was broken, but I had already downloaded the footage to my cloud. The next morning, I sent the footage to Travis and to Sheriff Daniels. But what happened later that afternoon nearly made me question my own sanity. I returned from the feed store to find my ranch's main road blocked by a construction crew. They weren't digging. They were paving fresh black asphalt. Bright yellow lines and a big sign that read, "Coming soon, Pine Brook Meadows, North Entrance Private HOA Road." And at the bottom property of Pine Brook Meadows, authorized traffic only. They were building a road through my property without notice, without permission, without shame. And it got worse because I noticed someone in the distance looking on from behind the new fence line. Beatrice with a clipboard and a smile. They figured they had me cornered. Figured they could pave over my land and squeeze me out gradually. But they overlooked one thing. I wasn't just Jesse Ray. I was the man with the sole gate key, and they had just paved their way directly into the palm of my hand. What I did next would trigger a chain of events that the HOA and their expensive attorneys weren't ready for. By the time the sun was rising the next morning, I was already dressed, boots-tied hat on my head, and leaning on my porch railing with a cup of hot black coffee. That new road was inching its way right up to the gate now, like a long black tongue attempting to taste what wasn't theirs. Pine Brook. Meadows thought they had them surrounded. But I had plans, big ones, I called a county zoning inspector. First thing in the morning, an old friend I helped rescue during a barn fire a few years ago. His name was Barry McDougal. Good guy, thick accent, always wore a bolo tie. When I explained what was going on, he whistled so loud it nearly blew my speaker. "They built a road without a permit," he said, "and through your property. Not to mention I told him they fired a bullet to take down my drone." "I'll be there at noon," he said. And he was. Barry came in a cloud of dust in a blue pickup truck, chewing sunflower seeds and holding a clipboard as thick as a Bible. He walked that new road inch by inch, took some photos, made some notes, scratched his head, took more photos. By the time he was done, he looked furious. "They're going to need more than expensive lawyers to squirm out of this," he snarled. Just as we were talking, a Pine Brook Meadow security patrol arrived in a shiny black golf cart. 2 men in navy polos, sunglasses, earpieces, the whole bit. One even had a fake badge clipped to his belt. Barry squinted. "What's this HOA Secret Service?" The taller one stepped forward, puffed out his chest. "You're on Pine Brook Meadows private development land. You'll have to leave." Barry laughed so hard he doubled over. "Son, I work for Travis County. You see this badge?" He flashed it like lightning. "You just told a government inspector to leave private ranch land that your little country club HOA paved over illegally. That shut them up quick." Barry ordered the road work shut down on the spot. Said the next move would be from the county commission. Fines, legal action, and maybe jail time for unlawful land use. The golf cart patrol left quietly, but the quiet did not last. That night, my barn was burglarized. I had installed cameras after the fence stunt, so I caught them good as day. 2 masked figures in black hoodies spraying something flammable on my hay bales. One had a red jerry can, the other a lighter. I called 911 before they had a me. They were long gone by the time the sheriff's deputies arrived. But the security cameras revealed the whole story. When Sheriff Daniels viewed it, he muttered an oath under his breath. They wanted your barn to burn, make you appear careless, perhaps get you evicted. Insurance problem, public outcry, I knew exactly who they were. The next morning, I printed out each frame of the video and nailed it to the front fence, big bold letters on top. "Try again, I don't miss." The HOA didn't respond directly, but I knew they were watching. A white drone hovered around my porch for nearly 30 minutes that afternoon, buzzing like a mosquito. I hit it with a slingshot. That night, I visited the old man who sold me the land by the gate. Mr. Ernest Walker lived in a shack on the outskirts of town, but sharp as a whip. Once owned all of the land that now made up Pine Brook Meadows. Sold it off piece by piece over the years. We sat on his porch, sitting on the porch, sipping iced tea and talking about the good old days. "You know," he said, peering over his glasses, "I still have a few surprise pieces here and there." The developers weren't paying attention. My ears perked up, surprise pieces. He nodded, little strips a few feet wide, but legal right through the middle of their walking trails. Their rec center driveway, even under their fancy HOA fountain. I almost dropped my drink. "You're telling me you own the land under some of their amenities?" He smiled. "You bet I do. And you were considering selling them to me?" I inquired. He winked 2 days later. The documents were signed. I now legally owned a thin path just 6 feet wide that cut directly across the only parking lot in front of Pine Brook Meadows HOA clubhouse. I haven't blocked anything yet. Not yet, I just posted a little wooden sign in the center of the lot. "Private property cross at your own risk under surveillance." That was enough. That same day, Donald Snipe rushed up to my gate again, but this time he was waving a court document. "This is an injunction," he yelled. "You can't block off access. You're endangering our community." I leaned on the fence and grinned. Who blocked who first? "Donald?" He stammered, face red as a chili pepper. "This isn't over," I said. "That's what makes it fun." But I wasn't prepared for what came next. The HOA filed an emergency motion with the county court to temporarily take over my property, citing public nuisance safety code violations and non-compliance with community standards. They were trying to get court-ordered access through my ranch. And the court date it was set for next week. I needed help, real help. So I called in a favor from someone Pine Brook Meadows didn't know I had on speed dial. Senator Bobby Lane, old friend. I once pulled him from a car wreck before the flames reached it. He never forgot it. I told him everything. The fence, the break-in, the road, the court date. He listened silently, then said, "I'll take care of it, but Jesse, be prepared. These people play dirty. You haven't seen the worst of it yet." He was right, because the next morning, I woke up to the sound of a bulldozer chugging along outside. And when I looked out my window, it was coming straight for my porch. The bulldozer moved forward like a metal beast, slow, but sure, its engine roaring louder. With each foot it came, dust boiled up in thick clouds as the massive blade descended toward the ground toward my porch. I dashed out the front door barefoot, shrieking, Hey, back that thing up!" The driver didn't respond. He just kept creeping closer, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. I could barely hear his voice above the rumble of the engine. But what I did hear made my blood run cold. Just doing what the paperwork says paperwork. I waved my arms wildly. Shut it off right now. But he didn't. That's when I heard the sirens. Sheriff Daniels' squad car sped down the dirt road like a bat out of hell, lights flashing, tires spewing rocks. He skidded to a stop and jumped out before the engine died. "Cut the engine!" he yelled, one hand resting over his holster. The bulldozer hesitated, then wheezed to a stop. Daniels walked up to the machine. Tough. "Who sent you?" The driver handed him a piece of paper, folded. Daniels opened it and read briefly. His eyes narrowed. "They faked this," he said, matter-of-factly. I took a step closer. "What?" He handed it to me. It looked official. A temporary construction right-of-way permit stamped with a fake county seal. It even had a fake signature from a zoning official that I knew personally. "They're getting desperate," Daniels snarled. "This is felony-level fraud." He called it in, took statements, and impounded the bulldozer right there on the spot. But I didn't feel relieved. I felt hunted because this was no longer about fences or gate keys. This was war. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my porch with a shotgun across my lap and my dog Ranger at my feet. I scanned the tree line every 10 minutes. My land had always been my piece of heaven. Now it felt like a war zone. The next morning I called Travis and told him everything. He told me to stay calm, that the court case was still days away, and they were clearly trying to shake me into doing something. "I need to shake them," I said. "I want them exposed." And that's when I came up with the plan. It started with the video. I had footage from my drone before it was shot down, security cam footage from the break-in photos, from Barry's inspection reports documenting the land sales. Even the fake permit Daniels confiscated, but I needed people to see it. So I sent everything to a local news reporter named Allison Price. Allison wasn't just any reporter. She was renowned for exposing corruption, and she had a huge online presence. She called me the next day I saw everything. "Mr. Ray, this is unbelievable. Can I come out to the ranch?" I said yes. She brought a cameraman. They spent hours walking the fence, documenting the blocked gate, the makeshift road, the mock construction, the security patrols. I told her everything, and I didn't withhold anything. The story went on the air that night at 6 p.m. The headline, "HOA Gone Rogue. Veteran Rancher Fights Back Against Land Grab Scandal." It exploded. Within 24 hours, the video had been viewed online more than 3 million times. People from all over the country flooded the website of the HOA with angry comments. The phone lines of the Pine Brook Meadows office were jammed. Their social media accounts were deactivated. Protesters in the neighborhood started gathering outside the HOA clubhouse with signs saying, "Leave Jesse alone," and "Freedom isn't fenced." I thought that would finally put things to rest. But I had underestimated the level to which desperation would push people 3 days before the court date. I received an official letter from a local bank. It informed me my mortgage was being foreclosed because of unpaid payments. I nearly blacked out. I did not have any mortgage. I paid cash for my land. Years ago, I owned every acre. I drove straight to the bank. The lady behind the counter looked confused. "Mr. Ray," it says here, "the foreclosure is being sought by Pine Brook Meadows HOA under delinquent assessments and infrastructure fines." "What assessments?" I questioned, voice shaking. She blinked. "Looks like $17,000. I stared at the amount, $17,000 for what she stuttered. "Evidently, they've billed you for excessive fence shadow encroachment, unauthorized animals. They counted your horses as unauthorized equine units, and, sunlight glare off your barn roof." I laughed loud and bitter. This was insane. Travis called an emergency meeting with the judge who was overseeing our case and showed her the counterfeit bills. The judge issued a cease and desist order against Pine Brook Meadows, stopping all further legal action pending the hearing. That bought us some time, but they were not through. 2 nights before court, my electricity went out, and not because of a storm. Someone had cut the main line neatly behind the barn, right where it connected with the county pole. Ranger barked like mad, but whoever it was gone by the time I grabbed a flashlight. No lights, no heat, no security cams. They wanted me vulnerable. But I wasn't the same man I'd been months earlier. I'd learned I'd grown meaner, smarter, quieter. I pulled out my generator, lit some candles, sat silently in the dark with my notepad. Because I wasn't planning how to stop them anymore. I was planning how to finish this. And I knew exactly where to hit next. Because Pinebrook Meadows had one vulnerability. They didn't know I'd found. Their entire HOA office building. Their headquarters sat on property. They didn't own. It was one of Mr. Walker's missing pieces. And who do you think now had the deed me? So at dawn the day before court, I nailed my own eviction notice on their front door. The HOA headquarters building sat there in all its fake glory. Fancy glass doors, marble signs, and flags waving like they ran a government. But that morning, I walked up the front steps in my old boots cowboy hat, tilted low, and slapped that eviction notice on the main entrance with a hammer so loud the sound echoed across the parking lot. It read, "Official notice you are trespassing on private property. Cease operations immediately. Owner, Jesse Ray." People inside stared from behind the glass like they'd seen a ghost. I turned and walked slowly away so that the cameras of the local news crew could follow every step. Allison Price was front and center once more, taping all of it. She whispered to her cameraman, "We're going live in 5-4. On cue, Donald Schneip burst through the doors in a full suit sweat, already showing through the armpits. "What the hell is this?" he barked, grabbing the sign on the door. I didn't even slow down, I just said, "Read the fine print, Donald. You built your little empire on land you don't own." He shouted after me, "This won't hold up in court." "Oh, I'm counting on it," I said, smiling. That clip, it went viral before I even got home. People all over the country were eating it up. Farmers, veterans, ranchers, even those in major cities were rallying behind me. Now my inbox was filled with support. Donations were coming in from strangers. A GoFundMe that somebody else created surpassed $100,000 within 12 hours. But all of that attention put a fire under the HOA, and they responded just as I expected with panic. That evening, somebody tried to serve me with yet another court order. This one accused me of illegally interfering with important HOA business and willfully impeding a duly constituted civil organization. It was Baloney Travis read the letter and laughed. This one's written like a junior high student with a thesaurus. But still, we knew they were coming apart, and that was making them desperate. The night before the court hearing, I lay awake reviewing everything. One last time, documents, videotapes, timelines, property deeds, sale receipts, fake bills, the drone photos, the bulldozer attack, all of it. At 2 a.m., while Ranger was sleeping at my feet, I heard crunching outside, boots on gravel. I put on my coat, grabbed the shotgun, and switched off the lights. I sneaked to the front door and peeked out the window. Somebody was standing at the gate alone, hands up in the air. I stepped out onto the porch, gun ready. "Say something," I yelled. "It's me, Beatrice Langford." I braced myself, the HOA attorney. She stood in the moonlight, looking smaller, worn out like she hadn't slept for days. Her hair was mussed, her heels dirty, and her voice cracked when she spoke. I need to talk alone. Please, I didn't trust her, but I listened. She stepped closer, stopping just inside the light. "I'm not here for Pinebrook Meadows. I'm here because I'm done." She dug in her coat, slow, cautious, and pulled out a flash drive. "This has it all," she said, internal memoranda. Emails, evidence they plotted the road scam, the phony foreclosure documents, even instructions to burn down your barn. I didn't move, they did too. "So far," she whispered, "I did not enlist for this, I made the drive." She nodded, once turned, and disappeared into the darkness. The following morning, I walked into the courtroom with Travis by my side, and Ranger outside with a friend waiting. The judge, a no-nonsense older woman named Judge Carol Ames, called us to order. On the left side of the courtroom sat Donald Schneip, 3 attorneys and an entire table filled with binders, printed out photos, and red-faced HOA board members. To the right, just me and Travis. The judge reviewed the papers for 5 minutes before raising an eyebrow. "Siray," she said, "are you ready to make your defense?" Travis stood. "Your Honor, we're not here to defend. We're here to expose." And that's what we did. We revealed the fake documents, the illegal fence, the bulldozer stunt, the arson attempt, the power sabotage, and the fake court filings. Then the bombshell Travis handed the flash drive to the court clerk. It was anonymously given. It contains internal HOA documents outlining a years-long scheme to acquire Mr. Ray's land by coercion harassment and illegal means. The courtroom went quiet. The judge tapped her pen 3 times, then leaned forward. "And the land that their headquarters is sitting on is owned by my client," Travis said, legally purchased and recorded 2 weeks previously. The HOA's lawyer tried to object, but was interrupted by the judge. At the end of the hearing, Judge Ames leaned back and said, "I've seen some slippery things in my day, but what I've heard here today is a concerted effort to curtail a citizen's rights." She ruled in my favor on every count. Not only did she dismiss all of the accusations against me, she fined Pine Brook Meadows $500,000 in damages and demanded a full investigation into the HOA board. But that was not the biggest surprise. 2 hours later, the entire board, including Donald Snipe, was escorted out of the Pine Brook Meadows office by county deputies in handcuffs, each and every one. And I stood at the gate with Ranger as they were driven away. But I wasn't smiling. Not because I wasn't happy, but because I had one last card to play. The land behind the new road they paved. Remember that little strip that ran behind their development? I had just bought that too. And I had plans for it that would make Pine Brook Meadows wish it had never tried to fence in a man like me. Because the very next morning at dawn, construction crews were showing up, and what I was going to put up there wasn't a fence. It was a surprise so sweet, so brazen, it would make the national news. At exactly 6:45 a.m., the rumble of engines echoed off the sleeping rooftops of Pine Brook Meadows. The neighbors looked out of their curtain-shrouded windows, expecting another HOA project. Maybe a gazebo, maybe another pathway through my stolen fence line. But what they saw, they were not ready. 4 flatted trucks rolled in, followed by a bulldozer, an excavator, and a long trailer, red, white, and blue paint. On the side in large letters, it read, "Freedom Arena, coming soon. Grand opening by Jesse Ray." That's right, I was building a rodeo arena right behind. Their development on the parcel of land they had tried to take. The one they paved along with the one they wished would be their HOA's crown jewel entrance. Instead, it was going to be my stage. I had been quietly calling friends from my firefighting days. Ranchers I knew from county fairs, a few retired vets who ran youth programs, and even a local high school marching band. They all appeared that morning. By 8 a.m., the first posts were up into the ground. My crew worked efficiently. I'd brought in real builders, and as they framed and drilled the arch for the front gate, I stood off to one side, coffee in hand, and watched residents of Pine Brook Meadows gather in clumps by their new fancy sidewalk. Jaws open slippers over bathrobes, barely tied. One of them, a man named Craig, I remembered him from the beautification committee, finally stormed across the property line. "You can't do this," he yelled. I didn't look at him. "This is private property," I said evenly. "You're trespassing." "This is a residential zone," he cried. I finally turned to him and said, "It's going to get a little noisier than neighbor." He fumed. "You're going to bring horses and people and crowds." "Yep," I said. "Every weekend, rodeo on Saturdays, line dancing on Fridays, veterans cookouts, and once a month, goat yoga." He nearly fainted. By noon, Allison Price from the news station was back doing a live broadcast from the construction site. Her microphone caught children cheering as the archway sign was lifted into place. Freedom Arena owned, operated by Jesse Ray. She looked into the camera and smiled that famous smile and said, "Looks like the only gate key that matters now belongs to the man with the arena." That night, I had a soft opening. Nothing special, just a community barbecue. But this time, the community wasn't HOA board members and button-downs and clipboards. It was regular people, ranchers, teachers, veterans, single moms, kids with toy lassos. The sheriff showed up with his posse. Even Barry McDougal, the zoning inspector, danced with a school teacher under a string of porch lights. And me, I just grilled burgers with rangers at my feet and country music playing low on the speakers. I didn't have to say anything. The smell of barbecue, the laughter sounds, and the vision of the broken fence line in the distance spoke volumes. Pine Brook Meadows never recovered. After the arrest of the board, a state investigation revealed unscrupulous land deals by their developers. Some resigned. Some homes were listed within weeks. Others just learned to live next to the beat of the rodeo drums. They never did rebuild the gate. They could not since the land under it. Still mine. A few months afterward, I got a letter in the mail from the new interim HOA president. A young woman named Emily. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Ray, we sincerely regret what was done to you by our past board. We look forward to seeing you at our upcoming quarterly town events. Your arena has put smiles on the children and laughter back into our quiet little community. Thank you for reminding us what community is really about." I smiled and folded the letter into a drawer. I never wrote back. I didn't need to, because sometimes victory doesn't go to courts or loudness. It goes to building something greater, something lovely right in the midst of your opponent's craving. And in the end, the man they attempted to fence in was the only one free.